Hello, Drew. Morning, all.
Sorry.
There you go on the right.
Oh.
Good morning, everyone. David Crisafulli, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All good to go? Until the state government accepts responsibility, Queenslanders will continue to feel the effects of a government that has not been able to plan, deliver and evaluate across all myriad of fronts. We've spent the night reading and reflecting on a call for change, and in it there are some alarming statistics that show the state government's failures when it comes to adequately resourcing and ensuring the right culture from senior leadership of the Queensland Police Service from the Minister down. It shows that domestic violence incidents has more than doubled in the last decade in Queensland, and despite that, the number of police per 100,000 people in this state has fallen from 300 to 295. It led us to start asking questions about what has happened in recent times, and today we can reveal new analysis that we have found in the budget that shows there are 12 fewer police in Queensland today than 2 years ago. I just want to say that again because the magnitude of that shows everything that is wrong with the government's ability to plan, deliver and evaluate. There are 12 fewer police today than there were 2 years ago. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because within here it talks about the lack of resources, the lack of the ability for the police service to be well trained, well focused, and this has consequences. And that is why we have consistently said that the Minister must be held accountable for what has been delivered. At a time when crime has never been higher, at a time when more people are in Queensland than ever before, we have less police officers than 2 years ago. Is it any wonder why Queenslanders are losing faith with this government? The Premier said this is a line in the sand. Well, why wasn't there lines in the sand all the way through here? And had it been done properly, there may well have been innocent women and children whose lives may have been spared. Why wasn't the line in the sand there or there, and why weren't there more police added there? The government promised at the last election another 1,450 police officers. We're nearly halfway. They have gone backwards by 12. That tells you everything you need to know about a government that is prepared to make all manner of announcements but just do not have the ability to plan, deliver and evaluate. I'm going to hand over to Dale Last, who has some additional alarming information we've been told today.
Mark Ryan has been the police minister in this state for 6 years. And with that role comes enormous responsibility, and we've had this report handed down this week which talks about leadership. And his leadership at the moment is under serious scrutiny because today we've been contacted by senior police who have informed us that the upcoming recruitment program at the Oxley Police Academy, the next intake, has been cancelled. Let me repeat that. The next intake at the Oxley Police Academy has been cancelled because of lack of numbers. And that should be ringing alarm bells right across this state. There is nothing more serious than having police on the road, operational police, right throughout Queensland. We are screaming for police officers the length and breadth of Queensland at the moment off the back of a spiralling crime wave, particularly youth crime in this state. And here we have a police training course cancelled. Police attrition is now rampant. It is outstripping recruitment. And when you think about that and what that means going forward, when those police establishments across Queensland are calling for additional resources, when there are major incidents, disasters occurring, when there are crime waves occurring and those districts and regions are calling for extra police, where are they going to come from? Mark Ryan needs to front the media today and explain how he is going to address this issue. Their signature policy at the last election, 2,025 personnel, as the leader alluded, 1,450 police embedded in that number by 2025, is now in tatters. And this minister knows that, and he needs to front today to explain what he's going to do about it. And in fact, I will go so far as to say he should be issued with a show cause notice today to determine whether he is a fit and proper person to remain as the police minister in this state. Because I don't think he's up to the gig. I don't think he has the qualifications. I don't think he has the back of our police officers in Queensland. We can't dance around this issue. This is a serious issue. This is now getting to the critical stage when you start thinking that police attrition is outstripping recruitment, then we have a real problem in Queensland.
Thank you. Thanks, Dale. Over to you.
The government always says, we're adding more police, but is there a concern that what has been revealed recently may mean that just not enough people want to join the QPS?
But that's why culture matters, and that's why the state government has to be prepared to show that they are serious about dealing with the crime epidemic, and that's why they have to show they're serious about empowering police at the front line. And in the end, promises made need to be promises kept. And there were no caveats on the promise. It was 1,450 extra police over and above what's there. And they can't even keep the numbers they've got. That shows you everything you need to know. And it's been the same minister for 6 years. It's been the same premier for 8 years. And crime is out of control in this state. And we have less police despite the surge in population. If that doesn't ring alarm bells, well, I don't know what should.
Just to confirm, the next intake of recruits at Oxley is not going to happen.
That's correct. Cancelled. The next intake at the Oxley Police Academy has been cancelled. Can I also add that embedded in those recommendations in this report handed down this week are commitments for additional police and support personnel across Queensland. If you have a look at recommendation 7, the establishment of a vulnerable persons unit, there are several hundred positions attached to that particular recommendation. Where is this minister going to get these staff from? Because this is crucial. There are lives dependent on these recommendations being implemented. Women and children will die if this is not implemented in Queensland. And we want to know, I want to know, Queenslanders want to know, what is this minister doing about that? How is he going to look Queenslanders in the eye and make sure that the police that this state needs are going to be available, ready for deployment, trained according to the recommendations in this report, so that we can start making sure that those victims of domestic violence get the attention that they deserve.
What is the solution? Because I know that's part of one of the recommendations is to look at recruitment and I guess make it tougher and more to focus on who are actually picking. So they don't have a big enough pool of funding. What do they have to start recruitment in the state, overseas?
Well, they need to put all options on the table when it comes to recruitment. They need to have a look at their current recruitment strategies. They need to find out why. Why are they finding it so difficult to recruit staff? But more concern to me is the attrition at the moment. We're losing staff hand over fist. Every week when you pick up the Gazette and you see how many staff are leaving the Queensland Police Service, that should be ringing alarm bells. What's particularly concerning for me is we're losing those middle managers. We're losing those experienced officers out of the service who are just fed up because they're not getting the leadership that they need. There's a disconnect at the moment between the senior executive within the QPS and those operational staff on the front line out there who are doing their best every day to keep us safe.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I know your leader's back Katarina Carroll, you back Katarina Carroll.
Look, Katarina Carroll has been given a job. She's been given a job by this government to implement these recommendations. And these recommendations are absolutely crucial. There are very, very tight timeframes attached to these recommendations. The Commissioner needs to get this right. The Commissioner needs to be rolling up her sleeves and ensuring that these recommendations are acted upon in a timely manner, because as I said before, there are lives dependent on this. Oh, look, those investigations need to be completed in a timely manner. That's one of the issues that came out in the evidence in the inquiry, was the length of time it's taking for these investigations to take place. I've always said, if there are bad apples within the QPS doing the wrong thing, then there's no place for them. But can I also say that by far and away, the majority of our police are out there every single day working their guts out to keep us safe. They are hard-working, they are doing the right thing by this state, and they deserve our support.
I just want to make a couple of points. One is the Commissioner will be held accountable for what's in there, and she said that herself. But so too must senior ministers, and so too must the Premier. And it can't be acceptable if deadlines aren't met, and they're very credit to the recommendations in here. They have fixed timelines, and the fixed timelines are before the next election. So there will be premiers and ministers held accountable, and that's a good thing. And we absolutely have to have a situation where ministers, every minister must be assigned a relevant recommendation, and it is their job to make it done. And both the Commissioner and the Minister, not and or, both the Commissioner and the Minister must be held accountable. Just on the recruitment, I've reflected on those recommendations, and they talk about the need for a greater diversity in intake, and that's a good thing. But I'll make this point. Until the government stands up and explains how valued people who wear blue uniforms are, the ability to attract them will continue to wane. That's plain and simple. Police need to know how much respect the community has, and there's two ways that can be done. One is for the government to value them and back them, and the second is to make sure that the bad apples are held accountable and dealt with. And that's why this report is so important. And the Minister does have some very big questions to answer today. How on earth has it got to the stage that there are less police in this state than 2 years ago, and we're in the middle of a crime epidemic, and we've never had more people in Queensland? Surely that is cause for alarm, because when I read those figures, I think to myself, at what stage did anyone have an assessment and say, okay, well, what is our strategy to retain our best and brightest? What is our strategy to increase our recruitment? How has it got to this in Queensland that there are less police despite having more crime and more people?
In terms of the Hospital, would finally send an answer with relation to the board being sacked. Do you still believe health ministers should maintain their control?
It's not just the opposition calling for the health minister to be held accountable, it's victims. Even they have said that it's not enough to accept that only the board should pay the price. At what stage in Queensland will a minister be held accountable? What is the threshold? I heard the minister yesterday say how the board should have known. Well, the minister did know. We told her 12 months before, and we were told we were scaremongering, we were told we were making up stories. The brave victims who came forward weren't believed, and now somehow it has to be everyone else's fault other than the people who are paid to administer the health system at the highest level. At some stage, the Premier has to hold her ministers accountable, and at some stage we have to get back to Westminster government, where well-paid ministers are held accountable for failings. And there is a shopping list of failings in Queensland Health, and it's not just in Mackay. We can point to services that aren't delivered in all parts of Queensland. We can point to record ambulance ramping, people dying waiting for treatment. And there is one common theme across Queensland, and it's not one health board, it's one minister who won't be held accountable by one Premier who has checked out of doing her job.
Does sacking the board change the situation with people like Mackay? We're hearing reports of doctors that come out of retirement to run these sections of Parliament. So in the short term, what changes?
A government that accepts responsibility, a government that is prepared to admit that what they are doing in health is failing, and until you change the culture and empower the front line and give them the resources, Queensland Health will continue to fall in decline. Until the culture is changed, that information has to be covered up rather than shared, nothing will change. And the Minister had the show cause notice for the better part of 2 months. And she chose when all of this was going on to make that the day she made the announcement. They have learnt nothing from Coldrake. Absolutely nothing. It is all about political survival. And when that happens, patient survival runs second. And the failings in Mackay have to have accountability at every level. And without that accountability being the minister, is it any wonder why brave victims have come forward today and said enough is enough?
Do you think it'll set a precedent for hospitals like Bush Hospital, for instance, in terms of ditching the board and starting fresh?
I hope it sets a precedent for a new minister. And I hope it sets a precedent for the Premier to start doing her job and holding her ministers accountable. It's not just in health where there's failings. Think about the failings across government and the fact that we have had not one single minister held accountable. Not one. So we've got a housing crisis, and the housing minister can promise 1,000 new dwellings in a partnership and deliver one in 4 months, and that's apparently fine. A Deputy Premier spent $220 million on a Get Square with the federal government. We don't even own the asset. We've handed back the keys. The Treasurer, the most senior person in the Premier's faction, dreams up a renters tax in the middle of the housing crisis. The Transport Minister can't deliver a single project on time or on budget, and yet no one is ever held accountable. So there are failings throughout the health system, and they're not all the responsibility of one of the more than the dozen health boards, and they're not the responsibility of the frontline staff who turn up every day. There's one common theme running through it, and that is the same Premier for nearly 8 years and a minister who has chosen to not believe brave whistleblowers when they have come forward and has been more intent on trying to suppress information than drive the change that is needed. And someone's got to be held accountable. And the victims believe that someone is the minister, and we agree.
The AG will shortly discuss reforms, law reforms. Do you think people accused of sexual crime should be able to be named publicly earlier?
I will listen and reflect on what the attorney says. I haven't seen it, and I won't comment until I do.
Just in terms of housing reports today that children in Queensland have no work in the state because their family is either couch surfing or sleeping in a car.
They are the young human face of a government that can't plan, deliver and evaluate. And they're the words of the Auditor General. The Auditor General in one of these reports talks about how the government made all manner of announcements when it came to addressing domestic and family violence and did nothing about it to follow through. But the earlier report around housing was equally sobering. And there is a culture where the government makes announcements and then walks away. And there are human faces and real tragedies that go behind that ability to plan. And sadly, those faces are young children who don't deserve to be growing up in a situation like that because of a lack of housing. And that is the real-life human consequence of poor planning.
Just on those consent laws, I guess that same response, do you welcome the changes that have been proposed?
Sorry, Joel, but I will have a look, and I'm happy to talk to you after. I'm around today. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much.